Hold on. Before you go buying animals for your one-acre homestead, you need to hear this. What I'm about to share could save you literal thousands of dollars and years of heartache. Here's the problem. About 75% of new homesteaders pick animals that are completely wrong for small properties. And look, it's not your fault. Every homesteading blog and YouTube video repeats the same outdated advice. But over the next 18 minutes, I'm going to flip everything you think you know on its head. We're talking animals that ancient civilizations raised thousands of years ago that modern homesteaders ignore. Birds that actually pay for themselves in under a month, and livestock that won't tear up your pasture. Yeah, I'm serious. Here's what's coming. First, 3 animals everyone tells you to get that are actually disasters for 1 acre. Then, my top 7 animals that are pure gold for small homesteads, including heritage breeds people have forgotten about. Plus, 3 bonus animals you've probably never even heard of, and 1 produces both meat and caviar. If you're serious about making your small homestead work, hit that subscribe button to SproutCycle Garden right now. We cut through the nonsense and give you what actually works. All right, let's get into it. Confession time. My very first livestock, standard dairy goats. Absolute rookie disaster. Here's what the blogs don't tell you about standard goats on 1 acre. These animals are escape artists on a professional level. You need serious fencing, and I mean serious. We're talking hundreds, sometimes thousands in fencing costs. But here's the kicker. They eat everything. Your fruit trees? Gone. Berry bushes? Destroyed. Garden? Forget about it. And on 1 acre, you can only fit maybe 2 or 3 standard goats comfortably. That's nowhere near enough to make cheese production worth your time. The feed costs pile up fast for very little return. Now listen, there are goats that work brilliantly on 1 acre. Nigerian dwarf goats are completely different. We'll get to those. But when someone just says, get goats, without talking about specific breeds and management, that's a red flag. Run the other way. Next up, chickens. I love chickens, don't get me wrong, but here's what happens to most people. They get 20, 30, sometimes even 50 chickens thinking more birds equals more money. Wrong. Dead wrong. On 1 acre with limited space, free-ranging that many chickens turns into a nightmare. They demolish garden beds, scratch up all your mulch, eat every seedling in sight. If you can find them instead, now you're buying massive amounts of feed, cleaning giant coops constantly, and dealing with more eggs than you can possibly use. And selling eggs? Most states require commercial licensing if you're selling beyond a tiny amount. Here's what nobody mentions. There are better birds for tight spaces. Japanese quail give you way more eggs per square foot than chickens ever will. We'll get to that in a minute. The mistake isn't having chickens. It's having way too many or having them when different birds would serve you better. Third mistake, regular pigs. Someone gets excited about raising pork, buys standard feeder pigs, and within 3 weeks their land looks like a bomb went off. Regular pigs root. It's in their DNA. They're searching for grubs and roots underground, and they'll plow through your pasture like a tractor on steroids. Your beautiful grass? Now it's a moonscape. But wait, there's actually a pig breed that grazes like a cow instead of rooting. A pig that can stay on pasture without destroying everything. That's the Kuna pig. And most homesteaders have never even heard of them. See the pattern here? This isn't about avoiding certain animals completely. It's about choosing the right type for your 1 acre situation. Everything changes when you get specific. Okay, we've covered what not to do. Now the good stuff. Animals that actually thrive on 1 acre. But real quick, if this is helping you, do me a solid. Drop a comment right now telling me what size property you're working with. 1/4 acre, 1 acre, 5 acres? I read every single comment because I want to know exactly who I'm helping here. All right, let's jump into the top 7. Number 7, and this might surprise you, guinea fowl. Guinea fowl come from West Africa's grasslands. The ancient Egyptians kept them. The Greeks raised them. Romans bred them. Initially, they wanted them for those beautiful spotted feathers. But here's what Europeans figured out later. These birds are insane at pest control. The deal with guinea fowl is this. Tick control alone makes them worth it. 1 guinea fowl eats thousands of ticks per season. If you're in Lyme disease country, these birds are worth their weight in gold. They demolish grasshoppers, beetles, flies, every garden pest you can think of. But unlike chickens, guineas don't scratch up and destroy your garden beds. Those loud calls everyone complains about, that's your security system. Guineas alert you to everything: predators, strangers, anything unusual. They're semi-wild birds that roost in trees, forage most of their own food, incredibly disease-resistant. Just give them some supplemental feed and water. A small flock on 1 acre is perfect. Minimal housing needed. The catch? They're loud. If you've got close neighbors, this could be a problem. And they're not great egg layers, maybe 100 eggs a year in hidden nests. But for tick control alone, in the right situation, absolutely worth it. Number 6, and people seriously sleep on this one: pigeons for squab production. Before you click away thinking I've lost my mind, just hear me out. Pigeons have been domesticated for over 5,000 years. Ancient Mesopotamians raised them, Egyptians bred them, Romans loved them. The Romans especially valued squab as premium meat. In medieval Europe, only nobility had the legal right to keep pigeon houses because squab was luxury food reserved for the wealthy. And guess what? Squab is still a delicacy today. High-end restaurants pay serious money for it. A compact pigeon loft can house multiple breeding pairs in a garage corner. Here's the magic. Pigeons reach market weight at 4 weeks. 4 weeks! Compare that to months for chickens or turkeys. Pigeons produce something called crop milk to feed their babies. The young grow incredibly fast without you doing anything special. The parent birds handle everything. And unlike most poultry that only breeds seasonally, pigeons produce year-round, constant production. Multiple breeding pairs can produce dozens of squabs annually with reasonable feed costs. But the market is crucial. You need buyers lined up before you start. Call upscale restaurants, farm-to-table places, specialty butchers. The setup is modest. The catch? You need to learn processing, and restaurant connections are essential. But for profit per square foot, this is criminally underrated. Number 5, Indian runner ducks. These ducks have a fascinating story. They originated in the East Indies, what's now Indonesia and Malaysia, over 2,000 years ago. Farmers bred them specifically to herd through rice paddies. The ducks would eat pests and weeds while the farmers worked the rice. When they arrived in England in the 1800s, breeders were blown away by their upright posture and egg-laying ability. The famous Igamo method in Japan. For centuries, Japanese rice farmers have released ducks into flooded rice paddies. The ducks eat pests, stir the water, which prevents weed growth, and their droppings fertilize the rice. Perfect natural system. Runners stand almost upright, like bowling pins when they waddle around. That unique build makes them ideal for gardens. They're absolutely obsessed with slugs and snails, patrolling your garden beds like little soldiers. Their upright posture means they don't trample your plants like other ducks. They navigate between rows without destroying everything. Precision pest control. Runners lay more eggs annually than most chickens, and duck eggs, they sell at premium prices because bakers love their richness for pastries. They're hardy, disease-resistant, and honestly entertaining to watch marching around in formation. A small group on 1 acre is perfect. Simple shelter, a kiddie pool for water, free-ranging through the garden. Between the eggs and pest control value, runners pay for themselves fast. The catch? They need daily water access, and they're messy with it. But for garden... Number 4, Japanese quail, also called Coturnix quail. This is probably the highest return on investment animal on this entire list. First domesticated in Japan around the 12th century, and here's the interesting part, not for food, for singing. Samurai and nobles held singing quail competitions. It wasn't until the early 1900s that Japanese breeders started selecting for egg and meat production, creating the modern Coturnix. After World War II, quail farming exploded in Japan as a protein source during food shortages. The efficiency was undeniable. Faster egg production in less space than any other poultry. Dozens of quail fit in the space of just a few chickens. You can use stacked cage systems with a minimal footprint. Coturnix start laying eggs at 6 to 8 weeks old. Chickens take several months. Your returns come in weeks, not months. One quail hen lays about 300 eggs per year. A decent-sized flock produces daily eggs in impressive numbers. Quail eggs are gourmet products. Farmers markets, restaurants, specialty stores, there's real demand. Quail reach processing weight in just a few weeks. Dressed birds sell at premium prices as delicacy meat. Even selling conservatively, quail operations generate solid income from almost no space. The catch? Quail eggs are tiny. You need several to equal one chicken egg, which means more packaging work. And check your local regulations. Some areas treat quail differently than chickens. But for maximum profit per square foot, this is unbeatable. There's a reason commercial operations use them. Number 3, and most people have never heard of this breed, cotton patch geese. These are an American heritage breed literally developed to weed cotton fields in the South. Think about that. A bird bred specifically to eat weeds without damaging crops. Developed in the late 1800s and early 1900s across the American South, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, cotton farmers would turn these geese loose in their fields. They'd waddle down the rows eating grass and weeds, but leaving the cotton completely alone. Living weeders that also provided meat and eggs. When chemical herbicides arrived in the 1950s, cotton patch geese nearly went extinct. Now they're a critically endangered heritage breed. Cotton patch geese prefer grass and weeds over vegetables. You can let them into your garden rows and they eat the weeds while ignoring your crops, like a living hoe working for free. Unlike most geese that need cool climates, these were bred for brutal southern heat. They thrive in it. Mature geese provide substantial meat, rich, flavorful, sells well. They lay large eggs, several times the size of chicken eggs. Bakers pay premium prices for them. They're naturally protective and alert to predators, which helps protect your smaller birds too. A small group on 1 acre is perfect. Basic shelter and water. They graze most of their own food. Incredibly low maintenance. If you spend hours weeding your garden rows, imagine geese doing it for free. We're talking dozens of hours saved every season. The catch? Heritage breeds, so they're harder to find than production breeds. You'll need to locate a breeder, and geese can get aggressive during breeding season. But for weed control in gardens and row crops, this is literally the perfect tool. Old southern farmers knew exactly what they were doing. Number 2. Kune pigs. If you assumed all pigs destroy land, prepare to have your mind blown. Kune pigs have an incredible history. They're originally from New Zealand, brought there by whalers and traders in the early 1800s, likely from Asia. The name kune actually means fat and round in Maori. The Maori people kept these pigs because they were docile, easy to manage, and most importantly, they grazed instead of rooted. This meant they could be kept near villages without destroying the land. By the 1980s, only about 50 purebred kunes remained worldwide. 2 New Zealand wildlife park owners rescued the breed from extinction. Today, they're gaining popularity because people are realizing how perfect they are for small properties. Kunes are grazers, not rooters. These pigs eat grass like cows. Their short, upturned snouts make deep rooting physically difficult. They graze on grass and vegetation. Your pasture stays intact. They're the friendliest pigs you'll ever meet. Docile, easy to handle, great around kids, zero aggression. They're smaller at maturity than commercial pigs, which is perfect for small properties. They get most of their diet from grazing during growing season, drastically cutting your feed costs. The meat is beautifully marbled and flavorful. With growing heritage pork demand, there's a solid market. A couple of kunes on 1 acre with rotational grazing works beautifully. Basic shelter and water needed. Your fencing doesn't need to be Fort Knox, they're not trying to escape. Solid income potential with manageable costs. The catch? They grow slowly, over a year to market weight versus months for commercial pigs, and initial breeding stock is expensive. But for raising pork on 1 acre without destroying your land, this is the only way. Complete game changer. And the number 1 best animal for 1 acre? Nigerian dwarf goats. Now, I know I said goats were a mistake earlier, but Nigerian dwarfs are so different from standard goats, they're basically a different species. Nigerian dwarf goats came to the United States in the 1950s from West Africa, particularly Nigeria and Cameroon. But here's the fascinating part. They weren't brought here as livestock. They were brought as exotic zoo animals, basically pets for petting zoos and private collections. American dairy goat breeders noticed something remarkable. Despite their tiny size, these goats produced milk with incredibly high butterfat content. By the 1980s, selective breeding programs focused on milk production. The American Dairy Goat Association officially recognized Nigerian dwarfs as a dairy breed in 2005. Here's why they're number 1. They're about the size of large dogs. 2 Nigerian dwarfs need a fraction of an acre, leaving you plenty of space for everything else. The magic is in the milk. Nigerian dwarf milk has exceptional butterfat, double or triple that of standard dairy goats or cow's milk. This makes incredible cheese, yogurt, and soap. That high butterfat means amazing cheese yield. 2 does in lactation produce enough milk daily for your family, plus products to sell. Fresh goat milk, artisan goat cheese, goat milk soap, all command premium prices with insane profit margins. They're browsers, eating bushes, brush, and weeds. They clear overgrown areas while giving you milk, double value from the same animal. They can be bred year-round, unlike seasonal breeders, and baby goats sell incredibly well. 2 does in milk can generate significant income through direct milk sales, value-added products, and breeding stock sales. You need good fencing, that's critical. Proper shelter is necessary. Quality breeding stock requires investment up front. There's definitely a learning curve. This isn't a beginner animal. You need to learn milking, breeding management, hoof trimming, basic health care, but the payoff is absolutely worth it. For maximum value from 1 acre, combining milk production, meat potential, brush control, and breeding income, these are number one. It's why knowledgeable small homesteaders almost always have them. All right, I promised you 3 bonus animals. These are more specialized, but for the right person, they're absolute gold. First bonus, yes, I'm completely serious, snail farming, heliculture. Before you laugh, listen to this. The Romans were doing this in 49 BC. A guy named Fulvius Lepinus, a Roman nobleman, created what historians believe was the first organized snail farming operation. He built special gardens called cochlaria, where he raised snails on a diet of wine and meal to fatten them for wealthy Romans who considered them a delicacy. But snail farming goes back even further. Archaeological evidence shows humans eating snails 30,000 years ago. The Romans just industrialized it. That demand never disappeared. French restaurants, Italian restaurants, gourmet food stores, they all need snails. Specifically Roman snails, or Helix aspersa, the exact species Romans farmed. You can raise thousands of snails in small areas using vertical racks. They're ready for market in several months to a year. One breeding snail produces dozens of offspring yearly. 2 products to sell. Snail meat, escargot, commands premium prices, and snail caviar sells for extraordinary prices per ounce. Because snails grow slowly, you compensate with volume. High density per square foot is totally possible. But buyers are essential before you start. Call French restaurants, contact specialty distributors. The demand exists, but it's specialized. Snails need humidity and moderate temperatures. Dry or very cold climates need climate control systems. Modest startup costs for enclosures and breeding stock. The catch? It's slow, and there's a learning curve for care and processing. But if you nail the market, snail caviar alone can bring significant income annually from almost no. Second bonus, Muscovy ducks. Native to Mexico, Central and South America. Indigenous peoples domesticated them centuries before Europeans arrived. When Spanish conquistadors encountered them in the early 1500s, they were already fully domesticated by Aztecs and other groups. The Spanish called them pato real, royal duck. But here's the fascinating part. The indigenous peoples who first domesticated them valued them primarily for pest control around their villages. The meat was just a bonus. Only later did Europeans focus on them as meat birds. Muscovies are predatory on flies, houseflies, stable flies, mosquitoes. They actively hunt them. If you have other animals that attract flies, Muscovies control that problem naturally. Unlike regular ducks that quack constantly, Muscovies are nearly silent. They hiss softly but don't quack, perfect for close neighbors. Muscovy meat is significantly less fatty than regular duck. It actually tastes more like beef. There's a good market for it, especially in Latin American communities. Muscovy hens will sit on eggs and raise ducklings naturally, no incubator needed. Drakes can reach serious weight, lots of meat from one bird. A small group on 1 acre works great. They need water, but not as much as other ducks. Fly control alone is worth it if you have other livestock. Add meat production and natural breeding, it's a solid system. The catch? They can fly, so you need wing clipping or netting, and drakes can get aggressive during breeding season. But for integrated pest management with meat production, these are excellent. Last bonus, hair sheep, specifically Katahdin or St. Croix breeds. Most people avoid sheep because of shearing. It's time-consuming, you need equipment, and wool prices are terrible unless you're making value-added products. Hair sheep solve this completely. They shed naturally, no shearing required. St. Croix originated in the U.S. Virgin Islands, descended from African hair sheep brought on slave ships in the 1600s. They survived brutal tropical heat, poor forage, and heavy parasite loads. Only the toughest survived. Over centuries, natural selection created an incredibly hardy breed. They were brought to the U.S. mainland in the 1960s and are now gaining serious popularity. They're parasite-resistant with strong immune response, heat-tolerant, perfect for southern climates. Prolific breeders, twins and triplets are common. Lamb sells well at farmers markets and to ethnic communities. Katahdin sheep come from the island of Katahdin and Scotland's St. Kilda archipelago. They've lived there virtually unchanged since the Bronze Age, about 4,000 years. These are basically what sheep looked like in Neolithic times, ancient, hardy survivors that basically care for themselves. They're the perfect size for 1 acre. Self-shedding, the wool falls off in sheets naturally. They're foragers, eating brush and weeds other animals won't touch. A small group on 1 acre with rotational grazing works perfectly. Lambs sell for solid prices. Multiple use, they produce several lambs yearly with manageable feed costs. They maintain your pasture and keep brush down at the same time. Double value. You need fencing and minimal shelter. They're incredibly hardy. The catch? You need to learn basic sheep health care, and you need a market for lamb. Farmers markets, ethnic restaurants, direct-to-consumer sales. But for low-maintenance meat production that actually maintains your land, these are perfect for 1 acre. If I were starting over with 1 acre today, here's exactly how I'd approach it. First few months, Indian runner ducks for immediate pest control and eggs, guinea fowl for tick control and security. Maybe add muscovies if flies are an issue. Why these first? They give you instant value with minimal learning curve. You're getting pest control, eggs, and meat while you're learning everything else. Next phase, Japanese quail for quick cash flow, or pigeons if you can nail down restaurant connections. Add cotton patch geese for garden weeding. Why this timing? Quail create income fast while you're building experience with larger animals. The geese are saving you labor while adding eggs and meat potential. Later on, once you've got some experience, Nigerian dwarf goats if you want dairy and have time to learn milking. Or kunekune pigs for meat without destroying your pasture. Maybe Katahdin sheep for low-maintenance meat production. Why wait on these? They're more complex. They need more infrastructure, more knowledge, more investment. Specialty additions? Snails if you have the right market and climate. Hair sheep if you need brush control plus meat. The logic here is simple. Start with easy wins that give immediate returns. Build cash flow and experience. Then layer in more complex animals based on your specific goals. Let's talk about real numbers, and I'm going to be conservative. From 1 acre, focusing just on a few core animals, Japanese quail operation, modest scale, maybe 1,500 to 2,000 annually. Nigerian dwarf goats, 2 does and milk, value-added products, 3 to 5,000 annually. Cotton patch geese, breeding and eggs, 500 to 1,000. That's 5 to 8,000 per year, and that's being really conservative. Here's what I'm not even counting. The pest control value, saving you money. The weed control labor savings, dozens of hours you're not spending on your knees. The fertilizer value from all that manure improving your garden yields. Or breeding stock sales, which can be significant. Maximize everything correctly, and 10 to 15,000 annually is absolutely possible from 1 acre just in animal products. That's not quitting your day job money, but it's a massive supplement that can pay your mortgage or fund your kids' education. Look, here's the truth I want you to walk away with. There's no perfect one-size-fits-all formula here. Your situation is unique. Different property, different climate, different goals, different time available, different local markets. But here's what I need you to understand. Stop just copying what everyone else is doing because that's what homesteaders do. The Romans farmed snails in 49 BC. Japanese farmers used ducks in rice paddies for centuries. Southern farmers used geese as living hoes. The Maori kept kunekune pigs because they understood grazing versus rooting. So much incredible wisdom gets completely lost because we only listen to modern conventional advice from the same sources. Think about your specific situation, your actual property size, your real climate constraints, your honest time availability, your local market opportunities. Then pick animals that maximize your specific advantages. Some of you watching this will go all in on quail for fast cash flow. Some will fall in love with kunekune pigs. Some will get weird and start farming snails. And that's perfect. That's exactly what should happen. What matters is you're making informed decisions based on actual information, not just blindly following what everyone else is doing. If this helped you see small-scale animal raising differently, smash that like button right now. Hit subscribe to SproutCycle Garden for more real information about homesteading, stuff that actually works, not recycled nonsense. And here's what I really want from you. Drop a comment telling me which animal you're most excited to try. Which one surprised you the most? I read every single comment and I respond with real specific advice, not generic copy-paste responses. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. That tells me you're serious about this. You're not just watching for entertainment, you're actually going to do something with this information. That separates people who succeed from people who just dream. Now go make your 1 acre work for you. Stop doing what everyone else does, be strategic about it, be smart about your choices, and pick the animals that make sense for your specific situation. I'll see you in the next one. Now, go raise something awesome.